We can go ahead and get started. My name is Zenobia Godschalk. I am the SVP of Communications here at Hedera. Again, welcome to all the new people who are joining us today for the first time, and a big thank you to all of our community who has been with us for a long time. As you know, we love you, we appreciate you, we have a lot of fun. For those who have not been on one of these town halls before, I just want to share a little bit about how this works, and then we'll jump into the questions. So we do collect the questions beforehand. I think this time we had about 80 questions, so we know that we won't get through all of them during this town hall, but we try to get through as many as we can. In addition, things that can be found on the website or questions that we've answered in previous town halls, those are ones that we'll probably skip today. We also don't engage in any price speculation or anything that could be predictive. We have, lots of things going on, lots of ideas, lots of things that we, love to share when those things happen. But we, here we don't engage in any speculation. We really just want to talk about Hedera, the network, the technology, the governing council, how things work, and a lot of the use cases that we're really seeing gain some traction today. So if your question doesn't get answered, please go ahead and submit for next month. And we continue to do these. We continue to see some great questions as the community evolves, as the technology evolves, and the use cases evolve. So with that, we will jump right in. Leemon, the first question is for you. When Hedera council members vote on major decisions, who makes the decision on behalf of each council member? Is it a C-level executive, a representative? What does that look like?
Oh yeah, so we are decentralized. We don't tell them what to do. The council member decides. So a council member is a company. I just mentioned Standard Bank in Africa. But each of our council members, they decide what they're going to do. So they decide who will be the representative that comes to our council meetings and votes on behalf of them. They also, if they get involved in the committees, decide which of their members will come to the committees. And when they sign transactions, they decide on who's going to be doing the signing. So we do not tell them what they have to do. They decide how they want to employ their ability to govern, and they're doing it. And it's exciting to see that. It's fun to work with them.
And let me just add, it's normally a delegation. It's normally not a single person that's participating. It's a variety of people from the organization.
Yeah, and I know, we have a number of committees, so we are lucky that our council members have expertise in so many different areas to participate in all of those. Mance, next one is for you and continues on the council question. So each council member at full council owns 1/39th of Hedera. When a member's term has been completed, and for those who don't know, council members can serve up to a maximum of 2 3-year terms. The council member, then leaves. So what will be the relationship between ex-council members and Hedera?
Yeah. Well, so the council members today run nodes. So after they leave the organization, they may not participate in that same way. Years from now, they may continue to run nodes, just not as council members. I mean, that's quite possible as well. They wouldn't participate formally in governance, meaning that they wouldn't vote on certain issues that come before the council for votes. But probably what's most important are the relationships that they are building with each other while they're here on the council or part of the council. Those relationships, of course, would not end. There'd be no reason for them to end those relationships. There are business relationships that are being created cross-council, and that's part of the value proposition to the council members for joining the council in the first place. They come in, they learn about Hedera, they have use cases in mind, they have other business interests associated, they work with other council members, and when the time comes for them to leave the council, of course, those relationships persist. Those would not go away.
Thanks, Mance. Leemon, the next one I thought was especially interesting in light of creators and people who create all kinds of different content. Does HTS have a mechanism that would work for royalties? So could someone create an NFT and still receive benefits each time it's sold to another person?
Ooh, interesting concept. So HTS just lets you transfer your tokens, without paying anything except the tiny fee that we charge. But you could imagine creating a token type that would take a tax on every transfer, and you could just decide how much it is. Cool concept. So that's not a feature we have. Of course, you can build stuff on top of us that does all that, but you might say, hey, wouldn't this be a fun thing to add in at the bottom layer in HTS itself, in the native service? Maybe that's a good idea. So this is what our HIP process is about, the Hedera Improvement Process. You should write it up. Write it up as a HIP. There's a format for it. HIP number 1 is the one that explains how to write up HIPs. And then talk to the community and see if there's community agreement that this would be a good feature. And then they can talk about that, and then it can get approved, and then it can get put into the system, and we can build it. This is what we're doing, is we have this HIP process. Apparently, there have been a lot of HIPs submitted already for all sorts of improvements. I wrote one. It was on the checksums for account numbers. We've built it into our software, and we're starting, I think other people are building it into their software now. So yeah, if you've got cool concepts like that, think about doing a HIP, the Hedera Improvement Process, and maybe this will become an approved HIP and get implemented into the system itself. That'd be fun. Good idea. You guys have really good ideas. So yeah, go ahead and submit it.
Right, love it. Mance, jumping back to the council, given Hedera is owned and operated by the council, does the council know about all upcoming Hedera announcements, prospective council members, and the projects that those other council members are building?
Yeah, as a general statement, no, not unless they are directly involved in the specific activity. So let's talk for just a moment about governance. We have the council, and there are committees that are focused on different parts of the organization. So there's a legal and regulatory committee, there's a marketing committee, there is a tech com committee, et cetera, those types of committees. And not every council member participates on every committee. The committees are made up of subsets of the members of the council. So if there's an announcement that's associated with a particular activity that's got oversight by a committee, then it's quite possible that the members of that committee would perhaps know about the announcement. But it's not the case that we as the staff create a report of all the different announcements that are coming up across all the different parts of the organization and provide that on sort of an ongoing basis to the entire council. In many cases, we're notifying the council of the press on the same day that it's coming out of embargo to the industry at large. In some cases, they're notified earlier under embargo as well, but no, it's not the case that the council knows everything that's being announced.
All right. Leemon, if we take a step back and start to look big picture, if you were to compare DLT adoption with the history of the internet, what year are we in now?
I'd say we're in a mixture of early 90s and late 90s. So we're not back in the ARPANET days. This isn't something no one's ever heard of. We're probably beyond Mosaic and maybe even the beginning of Netscape. I think we're beyond that. But we're not yet to where Amazon is a huge threat to brick and mortar stores. We haven't yet reached that point. We're not yet the year 2000. But I think that we are definitely on the really exciting part of the early 90s, where the internet really was. People were aware of it. They were aware of email. They were aware of the web. They were aware of things they could do over the internet. And it was starting to really start to have a real impact. And you could say in the history of the internet, what was the most exciting time? Well, probably the early 90s was the big exciting time where the internet itself was growing so fast. That's where we are right now. So this is a fun time to be.
It certainly is. Mance, question on a use case that I know has had a lot of interest from the community. Will the Coupon Bureau also use the Hedera Token Service to issue coupons?
Yes, thanks for the question. So we caught up with Jay from the Coupon Bureau earlier. They're excited about HTS. They would love to hear from you, the community, on how ideas for how they might leverage HTS. And also, they released a video today. I don't know, Zenobia, if you're planning to post that link or not, but I encourage you all to check it out. I learned just today that Jay also loves motorcycles. Shout out to Jay. Maybe we should do a road trip someday soon.
All right. Yes, motorcycles seem like a very socially distanced, good way to travel. Yes, the Coupon Bureau video is up on the Hedera YouTube channel. It should be the very first one up on there. So please check it out. Jay had a lot to say, and it was a lot of fun chatting with him. Okay, Leemon, Ethereum benefited from the first mover effect in tokenization. While virtually all of the initial projects, did not gain mass adoption, the financial infrastructure behind these tokens became a use case in and of itself. And the value is somewhat circular in that it derives from being able to manipulate other tokens in a closed network, but nevertheless, there's a network effect. Despite the composability of smart contracts, Ethereum has hit technical limitations of scalability. Can Hedera use appnets to achieve this, or is there an inherent loss of composability from off-layer or layer 2 computation?
Yeah, so appnets are a great way of doing this. The consensus service, HCS, is a good way of doing some of these DeFi and layer 2 kinds of things. Excuse me, you can also use these appnets as bridges. And so you can have stuff from Ethereum that is wrapped on Hedera and stuff from Hedera that is wrapped on Ethereum, and bridges between the different ledgers. I think that where we are heading is that people want to be able to use multiple ledgers with bridges between them. People are building bridges between us and other things, which is good on HCS. It's a really good use case for it. And then people are also doing layer 2 stuff directly on us. And then of course, layer 1 stuff on us as well. And I think what we're seeing is the world is going to this ecosystem where the network effects are spreading across ledgers, where you can be on multiple ledgers and have them interoperate. And we're starting to get more and more of that. And so I'm very excited about using HCS and using the appnets in order to do layer 2 directly, and even to be layer 2s for other things. I mean, you can use an HCS network as a plasma thing. You could use connections between the networks is a fantastic thing. And so more and more over time, what we're seeing is people finding themselves not locked to a single ledger. They can move between ledgers and go to the ones that have more performance. And so we're seeing that more and more.
Very exciting, Leemon. Okay, speaking of what we're seeing, Mance, this one might put you on the hot seat a bit. What is your favorite use case that you have seen being built on Hedera?
Well, so naming just one is sort of like picking your favorite child. It's not really possible. The interesting thing, though, is that we're seeing use cases sort of coalesce in a number of industries. For example, in healthcare and pharmaceuticals, due to the pandemic, we've seen an acceleration in the use cases that enable communication across multiple organizations and track global supply chains, such as tracking the spread of the virus in addition to vaccines through the supply chain, those types of things. Potentially a digital passport for organizations like airlines and concerts that would help us sort of return to normal in some ways. So, these perhaps wouldn't have otherwise developed outside of the context of the pandemic, but they're interesting to have seen, emerge as a result of the pandemic. We're also seeing use cases around supply chains of all kinds and tokenization, specifically tokenization of a broad range of items of value. I would encourage everyone to take a look at the webpage. It's hedera.com/users. I think, Zenobia, you might post that one as well. And you'll see dozens, I'm not sure what the number is up to, that we're aware of that we've posted on there. Just a really broad range. But I think if I were going to say a focus area, I would say a focus area would certainly be tokenization and its extension of data integrity use cases that, they're sort of synergistic in the way that they work.
All right. Leemon, circling back for just a minute, you mentioned the HIP program. Can you talk a little bit more about that process and you know, how proposals get approved, what might be the council's role in that?
Oh yeah. So if you Google for HIP 1, HIP number 1 is the one that explains the process of how you do HIPs, which is kind of cool. Plus it serves as an example of a HIP. But the idea is that you create this document that describes your idea very clearly, and maybe with example code, if it's the kind of ideas that would have code. You get other people to comment on it and to discuss it and to express support for it. We're unlikely to implement something if no one has any interest in it. But if everyone has support on it, it eventually then goes to various people that look at it to make sure that it makes sense and is readable and understandable and all those sorts of things. And ultimately, it ends up going to the council. And the council decides what is actually being created in this network. Now, of course, some HIPs are not any code that has to be written by us. Like the checksum HIP, could have been done, you just do it. It's not something we have to implement. But for things that we have to implement, the council's controlling that, and it goes to TechCom. TechCom is the Technical Steering and Product Committee, and it will decide, is this going to be on our roadmap? And if it is, when do we do it? We have lots of features we want to add, huge number of things we want to add. And so we have to decide what order to do them in. And so TechCom decides that too, on what the order is. And TechCom is the council members, whatever council members are interested in participating, and we have great participation in it. And it's fun. I get to chair that one. That's kind of fun.
Yes, I'm sure lots of great ideas coming through there. One more, Leemon. When will mirror nodes be available for the general public to run?
Now, before now. No, they're available. No, the source code's online. So a mirror node is a computer that's going to copy everything that's happening on our network, and it can check signatures to make sure it truly is what happened on our network, and then it can answer questions for people. The mirror node software is open source. We posted it a long time ago. You can run it. There is now a way that you can do one-click deploy in the Google Cloud to do this. So you can stand up a mirror node of your own with a one-click deploy in Google Cloud. And it will go to a central repository of information that actually you can get it in various ways, but it can get the information that it needs in real time. And you can run a mirror node right now. And we have a bunch of community people running mirror nodes, and I encourage you, run one. And it's very cool. And then your computer, your instance or whatever, gets to know everything that's happening on the network. You have digital signatures proving that it's all correct, and you can see what's happening in real time.
All right, thanks, Leemon. Mance, there has been a lot of discussion around various terms in the industry. What is the difference in your mind between digital payments and digital currencies? And how do you think HCS and or HTS will be used in the future of both?
Yeah, well, I don't think that there are industry standard definitions for digital payments. So I'm having to choose one in this context here. Digital payments in this context are like really slow and expensive payment rails or payment wires. When the wires fail, for if something goes wrong, then it can take many days or even weeks to resolve the matter. And we've seen this firsthand, right, personally. Digital currencies, of course, use distributed ledgers, and those payments are really fast. They're also cheap, and there are fewer places where humans are involved in the process, which lowers the opportunity for human error. The future is, of course, digital currencies in this context. So, it's pretty simple. If you choose those definitions, those are the differences.
All right. Leemon, in light of some things in the current environment where we've seen things like AWS shutting down services to companies like Parler, is there any way for council members or governments to prevent users or companies from accessing Hedera or HCS?
No. All of our software has been designed so HCS can't be censored. So it is set up that anyone can create a topic in HCS and you can send messages through it. You can encrypt those messages if you want them secret, or not encrypt them if you want them to be visible to the world. The mirror nodes keep them. And there is no mechanism built into the software for censoring that. And the nodes themselves, I guess a government could try to censor one of the nodes, but we would just use the nodes in other countries. And the government couldn't just censor HCS. They would have to shut down the node entirely. But right now we have nodes in every continent other than Antarctica. We have council members in every continent other than Antarctica. And I don't think that government's going to be able to shut down the whole network. It's just too decentralized. But the software itself does not allow, say, the council to filter your messages going through HCS. The software doesn't allow it.
All right. Thanks, Leemon. Mance, what timeline do you see for wide-scale adoption of Hedera?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to predict how long it will take for wide-scale adoption, but we can, try to look at the adoption rates of other tech sectors and then look at similarities and differences to our industry. For example, realizing the full value of IoT has taken a really long time because of the hardware requirements and the adoption cycles for hardware. It's different than software. Realizing the full value of AI requires a collection of enormous amounts of data. While we're really seeing a strong AI growth in recent years, Leemon and I started in 1993 working for the Air Force Senior Scientist for Machine Intelligence. And specifically, we were studying reinforcement learning back in the 90s, early 90s. And it's taken decades for the work that was being done back then to really come into its own. And it has everything to do with the collection of the data that was needed. We're different in the world of DLT. It depends on performance, cost, stability, security, governance, to start, which of course Hedera is directly addressed in many ways, but it doesn't stop there. It also depends on the regulatory environment, which is still unclear today. It depends on the development of an entire ecosystem of platforms and technologies that have to mature, in addition to the layer one protocols like Hedera, exchanges, custodians, wallet providers, DeFi platforms, and the tooling that is needed to integrate these infrastructure providers' solutions with the infrastructure systems that are already being used in the enterprise, like ERP, enterprise resource planning systems. The good news is that there's a lot of rapid progress that's being made, and it appears to be accelerating. And what was once viewed as niche is now being viewed by the mainstream as the future. And the conversation has changed. So I think that it's not 10 years. I think it's something significantly less than 10 years. All we can do is sort of look at the progress that's being made today compared to where we were just 3 years ago and see how significantly the world has changed in that amount of time. So I'm very optimistic that wide scale adoption is in the relative short, maybe mid-term, not long term.
Right. Yes, we see it happening every day around us, which is exciting. Leemon, why did you choose to make HBAR limited in supply?
Oh, it makes it predictable. If it could just inflate infinitely, then you'd have to worry, is there going to be hyperinflation? It's the same reason Bitcoin is limited. You want to say it's going to be 50 billion coins, it'll never be more, and then you can count on it not inflating. So that's why.
All right. Mance, today, current blockchain technology, some blockchain technology seems very expensive. Do you think it will be affordable for people to use in daily life in the future?
Absolutely, it already is. I mean, that is one of the significant value propositions of Hedera. The costs per transaction to use the Hedera platform are a tiny fraction of a cent or a penny compared to many dollars or tens of dollars for some of the first generation platforms. So the cost is no longer a bottleneck. It's no longer a consideration.
All right. Leemon, moving between worlds, with the low power and bandwidth requirements of running a node, in your opinion, could a node be physically located in a satellite, for example, Starlink?
Isn't Starlink cool? SpaceX is just doing amazing things right now. Yes, You could talk about putting it into a satellite because it's low power and because satellites are going to have high bandwidth, especially if, I don't know, Starlink may even help other satellite companies get bandwidth to their satellites. I don't even know how that's going to work. Yes, you could absolutely do that. You could also use things like Starlink to have a node in Antarctica someday or whatever. All those would be possible. Sounds pretty cool. It's going to be fun to watch Starlink. I'm really excited about it.
All right. And I think we have some volunteers who are willing to move to Antarctica in the community. So who knows when that will happen.
It would be fun to go visit that research station.
Definitely. Okay, Mance, when we are all back to normal, when we are out and about in our daily lives, how can Hedera and HTS be useful to the hospitality industry, like for bars and restaurants?
Yeah, the use case that immediately comes to mind is loyalty rewards. I mean, loyalty rewards are perfect for tokenization. And what I can say is that we have direct knowledge of at least a couple of dApps that are doing exactly this. Not yet public, but there are dApps out there that are already at work on tokenizing loyalty rewards for exactly this reason.
Right. Leemon, we've had sort of some different flavors of this question, but at its simplest form, why is the Hedera wallet not recommended for holding HBARs?
Oh, this has always been the plan. We do not want to be a wallet company. If everybody has to access Hedera through a wallet that we write, that's centralized. We have never wanted that. What we want is an ecosystem of lots of other people building wallets. Now, on day one, we had to have a wallet, so we wrote a wallet. And we've always said, well, we'll keep that wallet and maintain it until other wallets exist in the ecosystem, and then we'll stop doing it. It's sort of like we write little dApps as demos on top of our system, but we don't use them forever because we want the community to be building the dApps on top of us. Same thing with the wallets. So we have a wallet. It was there on day one, and it is, you don't need it anymore. There are now other wallets. If you go to hedera.com/guide, I think is a list of lots of stuff from our ecosystem. And there's a bunch of wallets listed there. Now, we haven't vetted them. We don't know anything about them. We can't recommend them, but we're just listing all the wallets we've heard of. And the community is building a lot of wallets. And so this is good. And I expect this to continue over time. The community will build more and more wallets. And so we aren't recommending them. We aren't doing anything with them. But the fact that we now have a thriving ecosystem of wallets means we don't have to be in the wallet business. And so it is less centralized. It's better decentralization if we just let other people do the wallets. And I think we actually still have our wallet in the store. It'll be deprecated over time and we'll phase it out and get rid of it. We're not doing it suddenly. But yeah, if you're using the Hedera wallet, find another one and switch to it, because that's the goal, is to have this ecosystem. Use those wallets, and then we don't have to do it.
All right. Mance, moving back to some use cases, how can a FinTech startup leverage Hedera, and what support can be provided to meet regulatory requirements, for example, FCA in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, well, when it comes to regulatory requirements, of course, the dApps or the companies that are building their product on top of us have to consider their own regulatory environment and the requirements that they have to operate in. But what we do try to do as part of the platform is provide tools that make it easier to meet those requirements. So for example, if you're issuing a token, there is a checkbox there for KYC controls to be used in the token issuance. Our file system, our distributed file system, it's possible to have what we call controlled mutability. If you need to delete something from the file system, you can get a proof from us, from the network, that the item has actually been deleted. And it's proof in the sense that there's a consensus in the nodes that vote on whether that file has actually been removed from the file system. That's useful for things like GDPR and maybe other things as well. So we build features that are meant to support the regulatory requirements of the different use cases and industries, but in terms of actually providing that, are building the product in such a way that it's compliant, of course, that's up to the dApps themselves.
All right. Thanks, Mance. Okay, I know, we're going to jump into a few more questions. Just a note for the folks who might have joined a little bit late. We do take the questions beforehand, so we're not able to answer any that come through the chat, but please save those and make sure that you submit them for next month's town hall. Leemon, is anyone working on an ERC20 converter?
Well, the easiest way to convert ERC20 is don't convert it. You can just run the Solidity contract on Hedera. But there's even better things you can do. So what you're really saying is, can you do tokens on us that are like ERC20? Yes. So you can do ERC20, literally take an ERC20 Solidity contract and just run it on us. Or you could use our token service. So HTS would let you do something just like ERC20, and then it's running at native speeds. And you can do all sorts of cool things. Or if you wanted to do something that was different from what our HTS does, maybe you want to add some extra logic. So it's not just an ERC20, but it goes beyond that into more logic in how it works, or a different way of working. Then you can build on HCS. And there's this standard, QuantStamp has an NFT standard for how to build NFTs on top of HCS, the consensus service. And so you can have an appnet that runs whatever kind of token you want to do. And you could follow one of these standards or just go off on your own and do it your own way. So you have a lot of choices, from using the ERC20 directly to using the token service, which is what it's for at the native speed, or to building your own that does whatever you want it to do on the HCS. And maybe you want to use some of these standards, or maybe you don't want to use some of these standards. We support all those things. And so you have a lot of choices.
All right. Mance, can you explain a little bit more? You previously said 2021 is the year of scale. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so this is a question that's referring to comments earlier. Maybe I should just make those comments again. When I think about Hedera in terms of its growth and sort of life cycle, in 2017, Leemon and I decided it's time to build a public network on top of Hashgraph. So we hired our initial team and we wrote a white paper. In 2018, we introduced Hedera to the world. 2018 was about making that introduction, raising a lot of money, which we did, and launching the network in a private context. The network actually went live in September of 2018. We also started council recruitment, right? It's a big part of what Hedera is. 2019 was all about operationalizing the council, finishing the initial set of services that were going to be launched or opened to the public. We had our initial council announced, their first 5 members, in February of 19. We launched or opened the network, what we call open access. We opened the network in September of 19. And then we started getting market feedback. We started seeing how the market was using those services in ways that were a little bit unexpected. And in 2020, we were reacting to market demand and market research to try and get a good product market fit. That resulted in the Hedera Consensus Service. It also resulted in the Hedera Tokenization Service, which was just launched a couple months ago, if that. But it was all about understanding market demand for our peculiar specific features and what they offer, and getting product market fit. I think that we are near product market fit. There's still work to be done to optimize and tweak, but it's pretty good. And it's being used by a lot of people today. And so then the question is, once you get product market fit, it's all about sort of scaling as fast as you can. And getting to that point means you're removing the friction points to scale, removing the friction or those obstacles that prevent adoption in a very meaningful and scalable way. We're just at the edge of that. I mean, there are a lot of projects that are using this today. We continue to learn, but this year is about finalizing that, having product market fit, and then adoption. And, you know, there are a whole set of activities that are associated with adoption that we could go into as well. Maybe that's what you're asking about. But that's what I'm talking about. It's all about having all of that work behind us and focusing on scale as an organization, as a community. And that's it. That's the context, and that's what I meant.
All right. Thanks, Mance. Leemon, another clarifying question. You mentioned previously that council members do not own the coins staked to their nodes from Treasury. And if they did, you wouldn't be a fan of that. But don't the council members decide how the Treasury coins are staked to their nodes? Or is there another governing authority that decides this? If it is indeed the council, isn't that the same thing as the council owning coins?
Oh, no, this is what's cool. Yes, it is the council that makes all these decisions. So the council stakes the coins to the council members. When we have community nodes, they may stake some of the coins to community nodes, but the council as a whole makes that decision. So the whole council has to vote and have a majority voting to make a decision like that. Once 1/39th of the nodes is given to one of the 39 council members, you know, that's how it will end up before we have community members, then that council member gets the benefit from it. But they can't unilaterally by themselves take their share of the coins and sell them and go off and have a vacation in the Bahamas. They can't do that. They don't have control of it by themselves. They just are one vote on the whole council, while the whole council is deciding what to do with all of the coins. So it's like Congress voting on what to do with money. No single congressperson can go take their share of all the money in the world and go off and do something with it. They just have their piece of the vote, and then it's the vote as a whole that decides what happens with the money. Same thing with the council. So a single council member does not get control of a single share of those coins, but the council as a whole controls all the coins. So that's very important for governance, for good governance, and for preventing one rogue actor from doing something bad, which is what and that's what ledgers are all about. You don't never want one rogue actor to be able to do something bad. You want it to be decentralized, where everyone has to agree, or at least, you know, a fraction of them.
All right. Thank you for clarifying, Leemon. Mance, will there ever be a token burn?
It's not likely. I mean, there's certainly no intent today on the part of the council to burn tokens. It should be obvious. I'll say it explicitly. This is not a decision that Leemon and I make, right? We don't make the decision whether there would be a burning of the tokens. So I think it's 99.9% probability that the token supply, the 50 billion tokens, is never going to change. That's our position as individuals. But I think the council would agree with that assessment.
All right. Leemon, would trusted community members ever be given the opportunity to run a node? And will there be resources for less tech savvy folks to help them with an implementation?
Oh, yes. And yes, both. So the path to decentralization, we have a video on it even, is step one is we have the council members running the nodes, and we have anyone in the world running the mirror net nodes, different nodes, mainnet and mirror net. So the consensus is done by the council nodes, and then the mirror net that watches it, keeps a record of it, answers questions to the world, is run by anybody. And so that's step one. We have that right now. And we even talked about that, the one-click deployment in Google Cloud for a mirror node if you wanted to do that, or you can just download the software and run it yourself. Anybody can run the mirror nodes. Right now, the council is running the mainnet nodes. The next step, step two, is when there will be community members running mainnet nodes in addition to those mirror nodes. And they will be community members that are known and trusted. Then step three is anonymous community members. And so anonymous people can run a node where no one knows who they are. All we know is the IP address. And so that will be the third step. So those are the three steps for the mainnet nodes. And in step one of the mainnet nodes, we open up mirror net nodes to the whole planet. And so everybody can run mirror nodes right now. And that's where we are right now.
All right. Very cool. Okay, and Leemon, this year, or I should say last year, we saw, a black swan event, something none of us could have predicted. along those lines, what would happen to the network in the event that a CME, which means coronal mass ejection, wiped out the entire globe's power supply? Is there a copy of the ledger stored in a secure, incorruptible location?
Yeah, a severe CME would kind of ruin your day in a lot of ways. So CMEs happen all the time, but what we're talking about is one of these things that happens every couple hundred years or every few hundred years. Can be really bad. The last time it happened, we were in the world of telegraphs, and even telegraph wires were picking up energy, and they were able to send telegraph messages without even using their batteries. That was funny, and it was interesting. Today, it would be an unmitigated disaster to the world, and it will probably happen eventually. So what will happen is that a lot of things get fried. It depends on exactly how bad things are as to whether every car in the world has its electrical system fried and every computer in the world has its electrical system fried. If that happens, civilization has some real problems. As for our ledger, we do have backups, and some of it is cold storage. I think cold storage ends up being hard drives, and then it becomes tape. Tape should do fine. So a CME is not really a magnetic event. Mainly what it is, it's a magnetic field that's changing. But what it does is it induces currents, and probably magnetic tape would be okay. Hard drives, it's very possible that the platters would be fine, but the electronics would be fried. And if that happened, then the only way to recover it is you have to take it into a clean room and carefully open it up and move the platter from one hard drive to another. Although maybe the electronics would be okay. It depends. We don't really know. The metal enclosures would probably protect it itself from induced currents, but then the problem is that it's plugged into your power supply and you're into the mains, and the power grid would have these enormous surges. But then there's ways of stopping that, and big data centers have ways of stopping the surges. So the answer is, yeah, a giant CME would be bad, and it's not entirely sure how bad it would be. My biggest concerns would be food and water, which could be really big concerns. But I do think that we would have backups that would be able to recover from once there was a civilization again.
All right. Thank you, Leemon. I'm glad that you have put some thought towards that. Mance, why do you think industries will choose to build on Hedera over competitors such as Ethereum, Cardano, et cetera?
Well, I mean, they're the standard answers, right? Speed, security, stability, governance. Governance is a really big deal. I think it's going to be increasingly important over time. Already important compared to what the industry sort of viewed as its level of importance just 3 years ago. All of those are obstacles to mainstream adoption that Hedera has directly addressed. In addition, we're working really hard to make it dead simple to use the tech for developers. The HTS is a great example. The Hedera Token Service, it's a native service, meaning that developers don't have the problems that are associated with using smart contracts, including concerns over correctness and security of the code and how to manage changes to the smart contract over time. So it's, there's not any single one thing. What makes this complicated and an opportunity is that it's the combination of all of those things, the security and cost structure and performance and governance and ease of use for developers, et cetera. All of those play into the value proposition of Hedera versus any other competitor in the market.
All right. Thanks, Mance. Leemon, I guess a math problem of some sorts here. What would you estimate the very minimum required transactions per second of tokens would be in order to support a fully tokenized world?
Okay, so I think that you do need thousands per second in each shard, many thousands per second. In addition to that, you need many shards. In addition to that, you need to be able to basically do state proofs. I think that ultimately civilization is going to need information going back and forth between ledgers quickly, and these bridges are going to have to be trusted. And the way you do that is you have something like a state proof, where you have digital signatures from one ledger absolutely positively guaranteeing that something happened. So you have to have finality, and then you need to have some way of proving that the final thing at finality was the thing you're claiming that it is. And we need that for the communication between the shards and between ledgers. So we're going to need thousands per second within a shard. We're going to need multiple shards, multiple ledgers, and we're going to need state proofs for proving the information going back and forth. We'll talk more about state proofs later, but I think that they're going to be a cornerstone of the future of all this stuff. Yeah.
All right. Mance, we have a question from a community member who says, I want to work at Hedera, but there are no open positions that are a fit for me. Could I submit my resume in case something shows up in the future?
Sure. And so, you know, actually, Zenobia, I don't know if we have an email address that can be shared for those types of submissions. But what I would say is that there's a quickly growing ecosystem of companies that work with Hedera. There are a bunch already in the market that are using the platform. You should consider working for one of them as well, right? They're partners. They're to the community or in the community. In fact, what would be kind of cool, I haven't seen it. It should be easy to do for somebody. It'd be great to see a community-driven website that creates a job board for the Hedera community. So perhaps somebody that's listening here today could think about how to enable that. But there are opportunities that open up from time to time, and we always are looking for great talent to join the team, but I wouldn't restrict it just to us. Think about joining any one of the organizations that are a partner in building on the platform today.
Mance, I love that idea of a job board. I do hope somebody builds it. And if they do, please let us know. We'd love to hear about it. Okay, Leemon, I mean, I think maybe it's because Sunday was Pi Day. We've got some other math questions for you. Are you still working on other math unsolved problems? And if so, which ones?
Oh, of course. Yeah. So this is fun. This is just what I do in my free time. And I've got some problems I've been working on for years. I've got problems in graphics. I've got problems in cellular automata, these little fake universes like Conway's Game of Life. I've got problems in unkeyed jam resistance. How can radios talk without having keys? There's some fun math problems in that, both in the previous kind, BBC, that I had a PhD student a long time ago do, and he got his PhD. And then currently I have another PhD student right now working on a different kind of problem with unkeyed jam resistance. I've got robotics problems. There's interesting combinatorial problems just in the design of the body of a robot. Fun stuff. I even work on the collapse problem, which every mathematician says you should never work on because it will take up all your time and you'll never get anywhere. But I had this really cool idea recently of one more way of trying to attack collapse. Will I ever achieve anything on that? Probably not. But it doesn't matter. It's just fun. These problems come back and gnaw at me. And of the stuff that I just mentioned, several of those I've actually solved recently. So I do sometimes solve these problems. Collapse, I wouldn't put money on it, but it's fun. But I thought that each of these problems is actually simple enough. I could actually explain it and you would understand the problem. These are the problems that I like are the problems that are really easy to state. And so I thought maybe it'd be fun to show you one. Would you like to see one? I can show you one of the problems. So, well, since I didn't hear any answers, I'll take that as a yes. Oh, yeah. Somebody texted yes. So here's a tree. That gray circle has two circles below it that each have two circles below it. It's a complete tree. It's a binary tree because they always have two children. And it goes down 5 layers. Imagine that it goes down 1,000 layers. But in this example, it goes down 5 layers. And I give you a box of crayons. So I give you a bunch of colors. Here I'm giving you 6 colors. Maybe you'll have thousands of colors. But the tree is 1,000 layers deep. You have a bunch of colors. And your job is to color the tree. So the goal is to find a coloring. And this is all we want. We just want to have an assignment of a color to each circle in the tree. This is a coloring of the tree. And notice there's 2 blues right next to each other. That's okay. We're not going to worry about that. What I want is for the colors to be spread out a lot, not bunched up in the following way. And I don't know how to do it. And this is a problem that's kind of fun. I don't know how to color a tree so that the colors are spread out in this way. So here's what we want. We want to make sure that all the little trees also have lots of colors. So here's what I'm saying. We want every single big subtree to be colorful, to have lots of colors in it. So here's a subtree. A subtree is when you start at the top and you go down each of the paths just part of the way. So I'm not including every single circle on the screen. I'm only including 7 of the circles, 7 vertices from this tree. That is a subtree. If you look at this gray subtree, it's got 6 different colors in it. That's lots of colors. In fact, that's all the colors. Wow, that one's really colorful. If you look at a different subtree, here's a different subtree. I like the shape of that one, HBAR. This subtree has 5 colors in it. That's still a lot of colors. Great, maybe this thing is colorful. Maybe this graph actually has been colored, this tree has been colored where all the subtrees have lots of colors. No, it's bad. Look at that one. That has 7 vertices, but it only has 2 colors. Okay, so we failed. This coloring of the big tree is wrong because there's at least one little tree that is not having lots of colors. So the question is, can you think of a way to color a big tree, say 1,000 layers deep, within colors, so that every time you take a subtree of more than 7 in, you're going to have lots of colors, more than in over 3 colors. So the tree depth is 1,000, in is 1,000,000. And I've made some progress, like I proved a theorem that says just roll dice and color every circle randomly, and you'll almost certainly get the right answer. It'll actually work. There's a 99.99999% chance that you will actually get the right answer just by coloring the tree totally randomly. So it's kind of hard to know that you have the right answer though, because there's a whole lot of little subtrees to look at. And so I don't yet know a single answer to this problem, even though every random answer, almost every random answer is correct. It's like looking for hay in a haystack. You can go grab something, but there's always that little tiny chance it's a needle. So I'm not looking for a needle in a haystack, I'm looking for hay in a haystack, but haven't solved it yet. Kind of fun. If you know anything about expander graphs from the early days of graph theory, that was the same way. They knew that almost every random graph is an expander graph, and they didn't know of a single example. Same thing here. Okay, so that's just the example. I don't know if you find this fun, but I think puzzles are fun. And that math problem is a fun math problem. And hey, if you ever solve it, let me know. I'd love to see the solution. And we will publicize you. It'd be great. So that's my hobby.
Thank you, Leemon. Love it. We are running way short of time. I know we won't get through all of our questions today, but I do want to cover 2 that have popped up fairly frequently. Mance, one of the most recent organizations to join the council is EDF, which is the French energy company, and is also majority government owned. Does this signal a change in the process going forward? We've previously talked about council members not being owned by government.
No, as a general statement, it doesn't signal any real change. There is a difference here. I'll try to be brief. When it comes to the utilities and energy industry, the largest, most respected companies in the world, all of them, or most of them, have a significant government ownership component to them. And so if we want to also achieve the goal of having the best companies in the world participate on the council, when it came to this sector, this was a requirement that we had to relax, and we did so for EDF.
Thanks, Mance. And I would encourage anyone who's not familiar with EDF to visit our website and read the press release in terms of sharing what the use cases are that they're really interested in, in terms of clean energy and their mission there. And we are excited to have them on the council. All right. And then to wrap it up, and again, we apologize. We know we can't get through all of these, but Leemon, last time on the town hall, we did talk about the auction of these coins. And so I wanted to make sure that before we leave today, you can share with us an update on what has happened in the last couple of weeks since you shared that, and and where we go from here.
Yes. In 2018, I made 2 of these metal coins. I am donating them, or have donated them, to Hedera. I am also going to write up a piece of paper that I sign that says these are the original coins from 2018, certificate of genuineness. That will be donated to Hedera. Hedera is going to have an auction. Hedera is writing the software right now to do the auction. We'll release that as open source. Community members will be able to run nodes as part of this auction, and we will auction off those 2 coins. The money will go to charity. So I've seen demos that are just amazing of the software they've written. Our guys have just written some amazing software, and it'll all be given away open source. And if you want to do auctions in the future on HCS, hey, this will let you do it. Or on HTS, you can do auctions on HTS using this. So that's what we're doing. And so they're making progress. That will happen. And also, I just should have mentioned, the problem I showed you is not dealing with ledgers. It's dealing with jam-resistant communication. It actually is saying, how can I color a tree? That's actually, how can I send messages without jamming them? And I invented once something called inchworm, because it was an algorithm that just walks around a circle. And then I had a bright idea and made it better. So now it's glowworm, which is inchworm plus a bright idea. And glowworm is a way of coloring one of these graphs. And I'm pretty sure glowworm actually satisfies the requirements, but I can't prove it. So that's the problem. Can you do it better than glowworm or prove that glowworm works? That's the problem.
All right, I'm having flashbacks to childhood with glowworm. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. We always do try, for those of you who are new to this is your first time, we do try to always add in one sort of fun and or random question at the end. I'm going to try to sneak in two here. Leemon, have you seen Swaggy Lee? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I love it. You guys are so creative. This community is just amazing how creative you guys are. I love the stuff you guys do. It's hilarious.
And then Mance, what actors should play the two of you when the Hedera origin story is told on the big screen when we're all allowed to go back to theaters?
Oh, I haven't even thought about who should play Leemon. Maybe we'll come back to that in a future town hall here. For me, it depends on whether it's a young Mance or an old Mance. An old Mance, Michael Keaton. And if you don't see the resemblance, then go back and watch Beetlejuice and you'll get it. One of my favorite Tim Burton movies.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone who has joined us. We do this monthly, so please, you will see an email go out. You'll be able to send in questions. We'd love to hear from you. There's always new stuff to talk about, always evolving stuff. We would love to hear more of your math questions. So please send those in. And thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are dialing in from.
Thanks. See you next time.